What's up guys? I wanted to do a video showing you these 4 knives here. This is probably the worst case of poor sharpening I've ever seen. It's just crazy. These 4 knives are like kitchen knives. I believe originally all 4 knives had different blade shapes. This is a carving knife. I believe these 2 were just utility knives, originally serrated, and I'm not sure what this was originally. But as you can see now, they're all pretty much fillet knives at this point, even though they don't flex too much. This longer one, being the fact that it's actually long, does have a little bit more flex in it. So in fact, if you were to get a nice sharp edge on this, you could use this as a fillet knife, but that's not what its original purpose was for. And I think this is hilarious because I've seen situations where knives were over sharpened or missharpened. But nothing is as bad as this, and I want to make a video on it. First of all, the knives themselves, nothing really to write home about. All Chinese, no-name brand knives are used in a kitchen type scenario, like an industrial kitchen, such as a restaurant, whereas a lot of cutting with it. But the problem is that these knives were not sharpened properly. They were all sharpened with a very simple, small bench grinder, with probably, I would assume, a medium stone. I don't think that, these knives, from what I understand, are about 5 or 6 years old. And even if you're using a fine stone, I don't think it would take off this much metal. But I'm gonna go over these in just a second, show you what they might have been like. But, as we know, when you sharpen knives, what you're doing is you're removing metal, okay? That's the only way to sharpen a knife, is to remove metal. Now, if you're, say, stealing a knife, you're not removing metal, you're straightening the metal. All right, there's a big difference. Now, in a kitchen scenario, you should be using a kitchen steel. Basically, you can have a nice sharp edge on something, but in use, your very acute edge, because more times than not, your kitchen knives are very thin stock, so they have a very, very acute angle, okay? Very low degree. And it's very easy to roll the edge over or bend it, all right? If you have it, you can have a sharp blade, but the edge is actually rolled over just a little bit so that when you're keeping it straight to cut something, it's not going to cut properly. In fact, if you have a knife in your kitchen and it seems kind of dull, but you sharpened it recently, turn your blade on an angle. Instead of cutting, like, let's say, I don't know, if this is a row of carrots or something, instead of cutting straight like this, turn your blade just on the edge. You might find that it cuts better that way. That's because your edge literally just curled over and it's pointing in different directions. It's no longer pointing straight down. All right, if that's the case, and you can actually tilt your knife one way or the other, and if you find it cuts better, it's because your edge is rolled. All you need to do is get a kitchen steel and straighten that already sharpened edge. When you actually sharpen your knives, that's because the edge is no longer small enough to easily cut through things. But in this case, it wasn't a little metal that was taken off, it was way too much metal. There's an abundance of metal that was ground off of the knife, and over the course of, I said about 5 or 6 years, this is the result of it. Now with this longer blade, you can see, first of all, you can see where the actual steel was. Originally, this blade came out to here, okay? So this blade was this wide, all the way down. Now it might have tapered towards the end, but at least down here, it was this wide. So that's insane. Plus you can see on the polymer itself, or this plastic, the actual grinding, okay? Or the process of who knows how many sharpening sessions, it, ate away, not of course it's taking away just the metal, but just by the sheer angle of it and carelessness, it ground into the handle itself. All right, so you can see originally what that blade should have been. Now, each time, from what I understand, each time they did get the knife nice and sharp, but it was just unnecessary metal taken off. When we sharpen our knives, we take off such a small amount of metal to do so. If your knife is really dull, you may need to use a very heavy stone, a very coarse stone. That's what I mean by heavy. I'm trying to use terminology that's more straightforward. To take off initially enough steel so that you can use a finer stone to refine how much you're taking off. Most of us, when we're sharpening knives, it's powdered steel. We're not literally taking off chunks of steel. If you use a carbide sharpener, which I always am against because it literally takes off so much steel in one pass, you can see it. If you take one of those cheapo, I don't have a good example because I don't own them anymore, but the carbide sharpeners, usually they'll come with like a regular, some kind of a grip like this, and then a guard over your hand, and then you're supposed to put the blade upside down, and then you put the edge right here, the 2 little carbide cutters, and you go that's how you sharpen it. And you can hear it. It sounds like that. It sounds like, and it's ridiculous. And it's like nails on a chalkboard. And when you're done with that, after one stroke, you can actually see small little lines or strings of steel, because you're literally taking off enough steel in one pass to actually see. When you sharpen a knife properly, it's powder. It's almost nothing. We're really finely taking off metal. Very small bits at a time, just till we get to our edge. But this was just on a grinder, just, oh my God. But I thought this was worth showing. This is the worst case I've ever seen. A lot of times if you find, grandfathers, great-grandfathers, your hunting knives were very often used knives. They had a lot of hard use on them, and they constantly got dull, and they constantly need to be resharpened. Now, some of the old timers, although sharpening knives properly with a good amount of use, I mean, if you're hunting, most months out of the year, and you're using knives constantly, and using your knives in a hunting situation where you're cutting through hide and you're cutting through a lot of meat and tendons, and you're hitting bone quite often, your knife will dull very fast, and you will need to sharpen your knife more often than, say, someone with like an EDC pocket knife. It's completely different. In that case scenario, sometimes your old-timey knives, the blade shape is completely different than it originally was, and a lot of times it's ground down where it's a lot smaller than it originally was. But that's years and years of use. This, although there's a couple years on use on these knives, it should not be like this. This was just, in each sharpening situation, it was over sharpening. There is such thing, obviously, as taking off way more steel than is necessary. But anyway, just to give you an example of some of these, let me hold these side by side. You see, on the smaller ones, they're all about the same size. But when you look at them this way, you can see what the blades used to be as far as size. And again, all this polymer resin here, all chipped away out and carved into in sharpening. All right, so you're talking about using electric tools to sharpen these knives where it wasn't necessary. If you use a really fine stone, even on a bench grinder, a really fine stone could still take off a lot of metal in one shot. You can see the width of these blades. I mean, this one obviously being one of the worst case scenarios, this blade came out all the way to the edge. All right, this might have been a long bread knife with a serrated blade. Originally, who knows how long the end was. But yeah, it's crazy. Now, none of these actually have points, like, a real point on it. So who knows if this blade was, I mean, being this wide, I doubt it was this short. It was probably a lot longer. Was it, a 7-inch blade? Was it a 9-inch blade? Was it a big carving knife? Was it a little bread, a smaller bread knife? I have no idea. Couldn't tell you. But I can tell you what they are now. They're all crap. They're garbage. Actually, I don't know. If you think there's a good use for these knives now, besides making a video like this to show you what not to do, post in the comments what do you think I should do with these knives. This one's just interesting. It's such a long, teeny tiny blade. And like I said, although not meant for it, because it's longer, there's enough flex in this. Let's see if I can hold this side here still and show you this. There's enough flex in this blade where you could, if I sharpen this up razor sharp, this would make a half decent filleting knife. But I don't need to fillet fish that often, so I don't need a fillet knife. If I did, you'd see a lot more in reviews, because there's a plenty of awesome fillet knives out there, even some really cool folding ones. But anyway, yeah, if you have a suggestion what to do with these knives, I'd love to hear it. If I had more time and more space on my walls, I would make a little shadow box and display these as well, because people would look at it and go, what's with that? What's the story with that? And it tells a story. It says, hey, this is not how to sharpen your knives. And a fun little conversation thing. But anyway, wanted to show you that, when you sharpen your knives, use the least amount of sharpening necessary. It takes a lot to really grind down a knife like this. I mean, these are substantial kitchen knives. At one point, and now they're just, I don't know what you can use these for. Interesting letter openers, I suppose. But I want to do a video on it just because it's the worst case I've ever seen of over sharpening. So I hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Take it easy, guys.